So, you ever have one of those days, or maybe one of those weeks, where you feel so overwhelmed it's like the universe itself is conspiring against you? Well, today we're unpacking a really powerful framework from our source material that's designed for exactly that kind of relentless stress. It's called Prismatic Cognition, and it's a pretty fascinating way to understand and maybe even master your own mind.
All right, so here's our roadmap for today. First, we're going to really dig into the problem, what the source calls the juggernauting challenge. Then, we'll get into the solution, prismatic cognition, and the 6 dimensions of mind that it's built on. After that, we'll connect it all back to your own biology and wrap things up with how you can use all this to become the master of your own inner system. Let's dive in.
Okay, first up, the juggernauting challenge. Now this whole thing starts with a feeling we all know, juggling too much at once. But as you're about to see, the problem is a whole lot deeper and way more coordinated than just that.
I mean, come on, who doesn't, right? We all talk about juggling work, family, our social lives. But what if the problem isn't just about keeping a few balls in the air? What if it's way more complex than that?
Okay, so this is where it gets kind of nuts. The source material we're looking at suggests we're not juggling 3 or 4 things. We could be dealing with up to, get this, 16 different cognitive and sensory pressures at the same time. Just let that sink in for a minute. 16 different balls flying around your head.
And these aren't just vague ideas. Look at what these balls actually are. We're talking about very real pressures. Everything from just the visual information your brain has to process, to work deadlines, trying to regulate your emotions, and meeting social expectations. Every single one of these is a heavy load on your system.
And that brings us to this key concept of juggernauts. Because the theory says it's not just that the balls are heavy or that there are a lot of them. No, the real problem is that these powerful external forces, the juggernauts, are actively working together to manipulate pairs of these balls against you.
This comparison just lays it out perfectly. Simple stress, that's when one ball, like your job, just gets really heavy. But juggernauting, that's when 2 forces team up. For example, maybe a visual distortion you're experiencing makes you way more vulnerable to the stress from your work demands. You see, it's a coordinated, systemic attack, not just a heavy workload.
So, if that's the problem, this coordinated attack on our minds, how in the world do we fight back? Well, the proposed solution is this framework called Prismatic Cognition, and it's all about learning to see the entire system that's at play.
So this framework is called Prismatic Cognition, and the source presents it not as some simple little life hack, but as a really critical step in a person's development. For the subject in the study, Dennis Verhage, who is a 3-dimensional visual thinker, this was a way to bring order to a world that felt incredibly chaotic. It's a huge shift in how you see yourself and everything around you. So you can think of Prismatic Cognition as your secret weapon, your countermeasure. It's a method for seeing the juggernaut's entire playbook. And instead of just reacting to one stressor at a time, you start to understand the whole system, using your own biology as a defense mechanism instead of letting it be a target.
Now, to really get how prismatic cognition works, we have to look at the theory it's built on. It's called the 6D theory of mind, and it's basically the blueprint for this entire strategy.
The basic idea here is that our minds operate across 6 different dimensions at the same time. So it's not just what's happening, it's where it's happening, that's spatial. When it's happening, that's temporal. The energy it takes, the relationships that are involved, the bigger context of the situation, and finally, how it all fits together into one big system. Prismatic cognition is all about learning to see all 6 of those layers at once.
So how do we even begin to perceive all these dimensions, especially the ones about relationships? Well, a key biological process here is something called TOM mirroring. Think of it like your brain's own built-in virtual reality simulator. It's the process that lets you feel empathy by mirroring what someone else is feeling. And this isn't just for being social. It's how we build a deep, intuitive awareness of our own place inside any complex system.
Okay, I know this might all be sounding a little abstract, but this is the point where the theory gets its feet planted firmly in hard science. We're not just talking about changing your mindset here. We're talking about using a framework to physically, literally change your brain.
This quote from the source really says it all. By actively using this model, you're not just thinking in a new way. You are physically remodeling the neural pathways in your brain. You're taking the controls of your own neuroplasticity to turn what feels like a weakness into a genuine adaptive strength.
And look, this isn't science fiction. It's all built on solid established principles.
First, you've got neuroplasticity, that amazing fact that our brain can physically change itself. Second, embodied cognition, this idea that our mind isn't just trapped in our head, our entire body is part of how we think. And third, recursive self-modeling, which, yeah, sounds complicated, but it's really just a fancy term for our ability to learn from feedback and constantly adapt. This framework puts all three of these powerhouses to work for you.
So, what's the end game here? What does it actually look like when you pull all this together and truly master this inner system? Well, it's about making a huge shift from feeling like a victim of those juggernauts to becoming the architect of your own mind.
At the end of the day, prismatic cognition is the bridge. It's the tool that lets you take that abstract awareness, just knowing that you're stressed, and turning it into a living, breathing internal system that can adapt, grow, and push back against all those external pressures.
The goal isn't just a one-time fix. It's about building a dynamic system inside yourself, a system that gives you deep self-awareness, that lets you correct your course on the fly, and that builds a powerful systemic resilience against those juggernauts we talked about earlier. It's really about achieving a profound sense of self-mastery.
And that leaves us with a really powerful thought to chew on. The source material behind prismatic cognition suggests that your mind is a complex operating system. So the question is, are you going to let those external juggernauts keep writing the code for you, or are you going to sit down at the keyboard yourself?